So let's welcome Billy Lewis on his perspective on the topic for 15 minutes.
Well, as usual, I was sitting there yesterday and this morning taking notes on what everyone else was saying, and then going home and going into a panic to try to figure out how to organize these notes into some kind of pattern. And I was getting so frustrated with it, and my dog was bothering me, that I decided to do what sometimes do in that situation. And to me, it's reflective of a way of approaching things too, because I thought, okay, I got to drop anchor right here. If I keep doing this, I'll never get nothing clear. So I stopped dead in my tracks. And this morning, when I didn't have time to look at my notes last night, and I didn't have enough time this morning, I thought, the heck with the notes. What matters is more the thoughts and what's behind a lot of the stuff that everyone said. And that's so true. So I went outside and on my back porch, and we usually do a thing, as most indigenous people called it, like welcome the first light. And so I sat there, and there was the sun just coming up over the horizon. So I had my smudge bowl, and I smudged myself, and there's a way of thinking about it as you're doing it to clear your mind, open your heart, purify your body, all the little things that go into that ritual, that ceremony. So as I was doing that, it all kind of come together, and I thought, well, it doesn't matter what's in the notes, because everyone of the presenters here has said something that can touch upon these things, and some of them were just absolutely fantastic. And so there's an old saying there's certain medicine groups, medicine in its broad sense, not just of aspirins, but of healing in a general way. It's called the Medewan. It's the Cree and Ojibwe way that my first teacher taught me. And there was a saying out of that said, go back to the original instructions and follow that good road. Well, original instructions in that context means whatever you've got from the Creator. No one has to teach a fish how to swim or a bird how to fly or any of the other things that come very naturally to the birds, the creepy crawlies in the earth. They're all part of life, but they all have their original instructions of what to do and how to operate. Human beings got a little more work to do. They got to consciously grab that and do the things that they need to not only protect the earth, but to take care of each other and to open up our hearts so that all the things that was said in a psychological way a moment ago here are the lack of a connection between the inner and the outer, between what we have in our hearts and what we see in the world around us. And I get a little nervous sometimes that we overanalyze some of that stuff and don't really speak from our heart. To speak in a good way, in a positive way, then that defensiveness won't occur if we have an antidote to that defensiveness. And it seems to me that that the trauma that some communities suffer is so deep and so strong that the cultural aspects of the things that I'm speaking of are quite frankly where the answer is. I've been part of ceremonies out west before I retired And what it was called Healing Ourselves, Healing Our Community. We had 600 people in a great big auditorium discussing how to deal with, for one, suicide. And before I came here last night, and it's kind of sad actually, I read and watched on the news, APTN News, that there was a young girl, 10 years old, in Lac La Ronge that had just committed suicide. And there are too many of our young people dying from the trauma of what their families suffered, the residential school system, and that trauma runs so deep that you can have 10 professional psychiatrists, nobody has the answer. The answer comes right from those communities to go and look at what they need to do, and that is what's beginning to happen once again. It happened 24 years ago when people had to get together and deal with that. And I speak of these things because, to me, it is part of what we're talking about here, about the unity of all the different spiritual groups and the spiritual diversity. And and that begins not with by looking at the natural world, not in some mechanistic way like spaceship Earth or Mother Earth. Just think of what the difference is between those two concepts, but of not of a calendar or a clock, but of waking up in the morning and greeting the new day, and in the evening saying goodbye to the day that you've had and giving thanks for that. Looking at each of the seasons as they change. It was just mentioned here a moment ago about 3 months for, well, that's a seasonal thing, once every 3 months. Well, if you did it at those changes of the season, which is when things are equal, or longer days or shorter days, if we, not very mechanicalistic, but if we think about that, then we're more in touch with the natural world, and also we won't be destroying it in the way that we are. Last time I spoke here at one of these things 3 years ago, the thing was going on that very day that I spoke here was when the people up in Elsabuktuk in New Brunswick were dealing with fracking water and all that was happening there. And that was literally the same day we were up there as when the next day, the opening here. And here we are here today in the same situation, because right out in Alton, where there was in Stewiacke, where they're going to put this 12-kilometer pipeline going both ways to take water out of the ocean, put it down into the ground, and melt the salt that's underneath there. Something like 500,000 truckloads of that every day. And I'm not exaggerating. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's millions of gallons of water and tons of salt to be thrown right back into the ocean again. And there's the people of that community are coming together. And what's interesting too is people that normally would not be joined up together. There's farmers, there's fishermen, there's indigenous people, there are townspeople, all coming together to say, no, I don't know the details of this. I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's not right. You can't do that to the earth. And nobody is consulting those very people. The first day I went down there over a year ago, and I'm standing on the shore, and there's this fellow standing next to me, and I start talking to him, and I said, well, who's up there? And I look and I see a barn and a house way up in the way. And it turns out it's his house. And he had no idea what was going on until he woke up one morning and there's a big trench dug in his backyard because the government had given him permission to do all of this. So not only with no consultation with anybody, the destruction of the earth, like there's where indigenous ways of looking at things that we can share together here today. That you don't have to be indigenous to know that everything that you need to survive and to grow comes right from this earth. The food you eat, the lumber you need to build your houses, the water that you drink, everything comes right from, and the spiritual, whatever the word would be, that you feel when you walk into the woods, or you're a part of it. That spiritual sustenance is also part of the earth, and all of those things are what bring us together as human beings. And I think that we really need to do that. We need to stop following the clocks. I haven't looked at mine here yet. I don't know whether my 15 minutes are up, but somebody can get the hook when you get to the end. And the calendar, and also the heart and the mind, the thing I was saying there a while ago, that we want to clear our mind, open our heart. That's so that we can be more receptive to what the Creator or the earth itself is telling us. As a matter of fact, there was a book written last year, no, 2 years ago, anyway, Bernie Francis, who developed the orthography for writing the Mi'kmaq language. It didn't exist before. We had no written way of expressing the language, and it was called we come from here. And what it was yeah, let me look at it here, see if I can see it. Yeah, Danweji Gwaliak Diek means we come from here. We sprout from this land. So we're definitely connected to this land. Before there was a Canada, before there was a province, we've been here for 12, 14,000 years, depending on who you're arguing with. And so that to be in touch with the land is so important to us as like a founding principle, not just as some nice ecological argument, but as a way of seeing creation and being a part of that world. Where, like when we walk out into the bush, or I walk out into my backyard and pick a flower, or dig the earth, or do something, I'll always put tobacco down. That's to be grateful for what we get from the earth. And I grabbed the wrong piece of paper here. I'm still looking. And to build good relations with each other. That's what the TRC calls for too. And I wanted to take what struck me too was a couple of phrases. One was apart, mean we are a part of the whole. We are a part of each other. The other is a part, where we're separate from each other. Well, it's rather interesting the way those two phrases come together, that we're either a part of the world or we're apart from it. We're either a part of each other, or we're a part of each spiritual saying. So it's important that we pull those things together and establish good relations with each other. There's and that doesn't mean that we're all the same, as I was saying yesterday there, that we accept that we have our differences, but that those differences should be welcomed rather than just accommodated. And it also means that the more we do that, then the better we are. And that also doesn't mean, and I'd like to pick up on this, because I remember someone saying yesterday about the ethics we start from and passing it on to our children or what have you. Well, there has to be a choice in that, like to challenge each other sometimes, as we can see from what was said just yesterday, that there are differences among us. Like, for instance, one thing that came up was the idea of God being represented, being, that individuals are a part of God, but they're not God. And that came up in the conversation yesterday, and it also reflects, in a way, the difference between sort of the Trinity and the Unitarian points of view. And so that understanding of God in that way is good, to have a healthy discussion about those things without it becoming enemies. And there was, I'm pretty sure that it was Joanna Macy or Matthew Fox, one of the more progressive theologians, who said something about blessed unrest. That means, that feel free to challenge your own beliefs and others' beliefs if you do it in a good way. That there's nothing wrong with doing that if it's done in a respectful way, and we can grow into something better. And I like that term, blessed unrest. And it fits too with sort of what someone was saying the other day. What's this thing blinking in front of me? Is this telling me my time's up? Time up. Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I better wrap it up. Okay. Okay, let's see. Da, 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 da. Well, I think we'll just leave that be, and except to go on to say one way of looking at that sometime is to look at what we have in the Golden Rule at the back. And there were two of them that I liked because they went beyond the individual of do unto yourself, like, which sort of individualizes that concept, which is not bad in and of itself. But there were only two of them that put it in a broader context. Chief Dan George said, "We are as much alive as we keep the earth alive." That takes it outside the individual, but makes the individual a part of it. And then the Unitarian one, "We affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part." Well, what better way to end it than to think of it in that broader context? So I know I didn't get everything done I needed to say, but I did get done what I wanted to say. But I really think that we have to stop and consider what everyone said in these last 2 days, because everything that was said fits into that pattern in such a good way that I could have all the notes in the world, but we got to get to the kernel of what every single one of those people said, and to absorb that, go away, reflect on it, and then absorb it into our way of seeing the world and seeing the earth that we are on and that we share in common. Well,
Thank you very much, Billy Lewis. So to give the Buddhist perspective on this topic, so we have Reverend Sirinanda Bandagiriya. So let's welcome him with a round of applause, please.
I'd like to start my talk describing an incident occurred to me recently. Oh, you can't hear me? Sorry. I'd like to start my talk describing an incident occurred to me recently. As a Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka and as a graduate student at St. Mary's University. One day, in our classroom, we were discussing about holy killing in religions. holy killing and honor killings in the religions. Lecturer asks a question, whether Buddhism accepts holy killing, honor killing or not. Before I had chance to answer this question, a student who was next to me answered it for me. She said that in his religion, in my religion, they are not allowed to kill even an ant intentionally for any reason. Simply, I endorsed her statement, and I think she answered the question in a very simple and meaningful way. The Buddhist perspective of perceiving rights of beings goes beyond the level of humans. Considers all living beings as having equal rights to live, to have equal opportunities to have food, to survive, and to use natural resources without destroying the ecological balance. The first precepts that all Buddhists should undertake is a promise not to kill any living beings intentionally. It's a very important word, intentionally. Regardless of race or size of the victim, Buddhism considers all beings with 5 aggregates. I will explain what five aggregates in later. 5 aggregates to be living beings. As a mother, protect her only son, risking her own life. Buddhists perceive all living beings by practicing loving kindness. The fundamental principles of Buddhism protect the rights of all living beings. The focus of this presentation is to highlight that nature consisting of animals and humans are the same, and none of them have any specific ethical right to overuse the nature. According to Buddhism, all fundamental rights that you have as a human, what you call today as human rights, should be the rights of all beings. I have an optimistic view about this. I assume that today's world is heading in this direction, and that very soon the entire world will understand the rights of all beings. Last month, Canada made a very important step toward this subject area. Canada declared that animals are considered sentient beings, not just property or goods. Some other countries turned toward this point a few years ago. For example, New Zealand and the United Kingdom made this ruling in last year, 2015. However, Buddhist countries such as Sri Lanka and early India had declared it more than 25 centuries ago. King Ashoka, popularly known as Ashoka the Great, a monarch of India, became a Buddhist after first-hand witnessing a large number of casualties caused by one of his military campaigns. He brought forward a number of changes and established few of the first animal rights laws. In his edict, King Ashoka expressed his concern about animals being killed to provide him meals, and his intention was to end such killings. He therefore stopped the royal hunting parties and ended the killing of animals for the royal kitchen and absent from eating meat. Most importantly, he established the first veterinary hospital in the world. In Buddhism, sentient beings are beings with consciousness within the same context where life itself. Sentient beings are composed of 5 aggregates. In Pali and Sanskrit, even in Sinhalese, we call skandha: form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. These are the 5 aggregates. The difference between animals and humans is just the ways of development of those aggregates in their different physical forms. There are well-known 5 precepts we call Panchasila, form the minimum code of ethics that every lay Buddhist is expected to and adhere to. The first precepts involve absence of any harm to life. In its positive sense, it means the cultivation of compassion and sympathy for all living things, all living beings. The Buddhist layman is expected to abstain from selling meat too. Buddhist monks have to abide by an even stricter code of ethics than lay people. They have to abstain from practice which would involve even unintentionally injury to living creatures. For instance, the Buddha ruled out going on a walk during the rainy season because of possible injury to worms and insects that comes to the surface in the wet weather. The same concern of nonviolence prevent a monk from digging the ground. Once a monk who was a potter prior to ordination built himself a clay hut and set it on fire to give it a fine finish in Buddha's time. The Buddha strongly objected to this, and as so many living creatures would have been burned during the process. Buddhism also prescribes the practice of metta, loving kindness towards all creatures of all quarters without restriction. The Metta Sutta, it's a discourse in Buddhism, enjoins the cultivation of loving kindness towards all creatures, timid and steady, long and short, big and small, minute and great, visible and invisible, near and far, born and awaiting to be born. All beings are suffused with loving attitude, just as one's own life is precious to oneself, so is the life of the others precious to themselves. Therefore, a reverential attitude must be cultivated toward all forms of life. The understanding of karma and rebirth also prepare the Buddhists to adopt a sympathetic attitude towards animals. According to this belief, it is possible for human beings to be reborn in subhuman status among animals. There is a sutta, discourses called Kukkuravattika Sutta, can be cited as a canonical reference which substantiates this view. Jataka stories, the stories of the Buddha's past lives, provide ample testimony to this view in the commentarial literature. It is possible that our own close relatives have been reborn as animals. Therefore, it is the right thing to treat animals with kindness and sympathy. The Buddhist notion of merit also produces gentle, nonviolent attitude towards living creatures. It is said that if one throws dishwashing water into a pool where there are insects and living creatures, intending that they feed on the tiny particles of food thus washed away, one accumulates merits even by such small generosity. According to the Machudana Jataka, it is a Jataka story, the Bodhisattva, the Buddha's past life, threw his leftover food into a river in order to feed the fish. And by the power of that merit, he was saved from an impending disaster. Thus, kindness to animals, be they big or small, is a source of merit. Merit's need for human beings to improve their lot in cycles of rebirth and to approach the final goal, Nibbana. Then nature. The open air, natural habitats, and forest trees have a specific fascination for the Eastern mind as symbols of spirituality. Buddhists worship the Bodhi tree. This is because of their gratitude for their great teacher. Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, who became enlightened under the Bodhi tree. Buddhists believe that he was venerated Bodhi tree himself as a gratitude for the Bodhi tree. Actually, the gratitude is a very important, one of most important moral principle in Buddhism. So Buddhists even try to gratitude natural things or everything what they helped. I have some photos to show you that in Sri Lanka, people venerate Bodhi trees. In every temple in Sri Lanka have this kind of trees. So always people try to respect Bodhi tree in this manner. So every temple. Actually, this is, I think, Sri Mahabodhi is the oldest tree in Sri Lanka. People always try to worship and respect the Bodhi tree. The construction of parks and pleasure groves for public use is considered a great meritorious deed. As Buddhists believe, Sakra, the lord of the god, is said to have reached his status as a result of social services, such as the construction of parks, pleasure groves, ponds, wells, and roads. The Buddhist attitude towards using natural resources is also very important to consider. Recently, I read an article. One writer says that within 40 years, Americans alone have consumed natural resources to the quantity of what all mankind has consumed for the last 4,000 years. The vast, non-replenishable resources of fossil fuels, which took millions of years to form, have been consumed within a couple of centuries to point of near exhaustion. This consumerism has given rise to an energy crisis on one hand and pollution problem on the other hand. This greed reminds one of the traditional parable of the goose that laid the golden eggs. Buddhism advocates a gentle, non-aggressive attitude towards nature. According to the Singalova Sutta, a householder should accumulate wealth as a bee collects pollen from a flower. The bee harms neither the fragrance nor the beauty of the flower, but gathers pollen to turn it into a sweet honey. Similarly, man is expected to make legitimate use of nature so that he can rise above nature and realize his innate spiritual potential. In conclusion, not only humans, but all beings have rights, and we should respect their rights. Nature is not only for humans, but for all creatures, and we have to share it with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sirinanda. The third and final panelist is Dr. Shastri Venkamamidi. He is a Hindu priest serving the need of the community in Halifax for the last 3 decades. He is a part-time professor of engineering at St. Mary's University. So let's welcome him for his perspective on the topic.
As I am a Hindu priest also, not only a part-time professor and a speaker at such conferences, I ask you kindly to stand up. We will have a prayer with which I want to commence my presentation. So I request you kindly to stand up and close your eyes and listen. The chant which I am going to present now is a prayer between that speaker and the listener. It says, the meaning I'll give you first so that you will enjoy when the chanting is done. It starts with Om, which is a symbol for the divine, for the absolute, God, whatever you call self. Sahana Vavatu, may we be together. Sahana is together, Avatu become, may we be together. Sahanau bhunaktu. May we absorb the matter together. Sahaviryang karavavahai. May we have strength, physical, mental, to absorb this matter. Tejasvinavadhitamastu. May our intellects be sharp and smart to dwell into this subject matter. Ma vidvishavahai. May we not hate each other. If there is a hatred between the two sides, between the speaker and the listener, no purpose can be served. So this is a peace invocation. I ask you kindly to focus. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryang Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Please be seated. So here in the subject given about the human rights and our relationship with the earth, I see there are two topics, so I would like to address both of them and see the connection between the two. Before we think about human rights, I would like to analyze or present the various phases or various faces of the human personality. We say, according to our Hindu tradition, that there are 7 aspects to the individual. The individual has got a physical body, it's called body consciousness. Then the body is maintained through breathing, so breath is important. And there are so many thoughts going on in the mind, so mind is the 3rd aspect. Intellect is the 4th aspect. Now, I will explain the difference between the mind and intellect in a minute. So, body, breath, mind, intellect, memory. Memory is the 5th aspect. And the 6th aspect is ego, about which everybody has been talking. Ego, egoistic. And the 7th aspect is the self, the divine, the spark of existence, the awareness, the consciousness, the God principle in every individual. Now this body, if you see, has got 5 organs of perception. These are the sense doors through which the stimuli from the external world enters the individual. They are called Tvak, Chakshu, Shrotra, Jihva, Aghranas. These are the technical names. Tvak means the skin. Chakshu means eyes. Shrotra means ears. Jihva means tongue. Aghrana means nose. Just see, do we have any other inlet in our body beyond these 5 for the external stimuli to come into the individual? No. These are the 5 sense doors we call. Then, for the stimuli that comes in, there is a reaction. And the action is done through 5 karmendriyas. Karma means action. Indriya means organ. So there are 5 organs of action. And they are Vaku, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upasthas. Vaku means word. Through the word we act. And great actions are done by beautiful speeches, isn't it? Whether it is a presidential debate or any university professor speaking, it is an action. It is through walk, through word. Pani means hands. And we all know that through hands we do work. Whether it is farming work done by the laborer, by the farmer, or the mechanic doing his work in the industries and all that. So Vaku, Pani, Pada is feet. And we all used our feet to come here. That is an action. We walk, isn't it? That is an action. Vaku, Pani, Pada, Payu. Payu and Upastha means anus and genitals. These are the 2 organs through which action is done. So in all there are 5 sense organs of perception, 5 sense organs of action. And these are common for all human beings. Maybe the sizes may be different here and there. color may be different here and there, but basically the functions are the same. And then we have got the breath. As you know, breathing is very vital, very essential. Unless we breathe, we can't live. At the most, you can stay 30 seconds, 40 seconds, or 1 minute without breathing. If you stop breathing, you will not be alive. So breath is very vital. And you see, we breathe the same common air. There is no separate air for black people, separate air for white people, separate air for rich people, separate air for poor people. The same environment is used by all of us. Why I am bringing out these things is, in order to appreciate the human right as well as the violation of human right, if we have a deep understanding of the essential personality concepts, then there will not be any abuses or fights over these abuses. So we have come up to mind. Mind is the process where thoughts happen in our subconscious. So many thoughts come and go, just like waves coming in the ocean and merging back into the ocean. It is said that the thoughts rise from the subconscious, they get manifested, and they again merge back. And thoughts are very common for the mind. If somebody complains, I have too many thoughts, nothing to bother. That means you are having nice mind. The mind is active and healthy. Now, the thought that decides about the vacillation is the deciding thought. It is called the intellect. Now, the mind has got vacillations, whether to do or not to do, whether to go or not to go. Well, most of us here are not definite whether we will come or not come. Some have come, some have not come. But everybody has got a vacillation, not only coming to this conference, every aspect in our life, we have choices. Wherever there is a choice, there is a vacillation, for and against. And there will be a deciding thought which says one way or other, whether to come, and we have all come, so we decided to come. Some people could not come, they decided not to come. So the decision factor is done by the intellect. And that is based on one's experiences, similar places, at such conferences or at such incidents, what was the experience. So the intellect will decide and say to the organs of action, hey, you walk there or you don't walk there, whatever. So we have got mind, intellect, memory. Memory is the storehouse of all our experiences. Where do you have your experience of last year, 2 years back, 3 years back? We went there, Jamaica, Hawaii, whatever, honeymoon. But once the honeymoon is over, the honey is over as well as the honeymoon is over. When you come back, you have only memories of your experiences. So memory is one aspect. It's again a thought of the past experiences, memory. Ego is a very, very dubious and very compelling aspect of the personality. We all have that ego, the spirit of ego. If it is not there, then you won't go back to your home because you don't recognize where your house is. So ego is that aspect which aggrandizes, which asserts, which says that this is my house, this is my property, this is my body, this is my life. If you analyze, everything is happening in nature. Who are you to claim your body? The body is born between two individuals meeting together, and the nature will help for the body to grow, and it has grown up to this stage. And after some stage, it will die away. So the aspect of ego is very, very mischievous, and that's the ego is causing a lot of problems everywhere. And the seventh level of existence is the self, the soul, the life force, the awareness, the consciousness. And this is the very subtlest aspect of the individual. And we all know that if there is no life, if there is no consciousness, none of the other 6 levels can function. We cannot walk, we cannot talk, we cannot think, we cannot have any perception or action. Once the death happens for the physical body and the soul is away, soul leaves the body. And if we realize the core of our existence is the soul, whether it is any individual about oneself or the person sitting in front of you or anywhere else, it is not only the human beings. Any living thing has got the life in it. that life aspect, that principle of consciousness is common, is unbiased, is having no differences whatsoever. If at all we want to find a commonality among all nature, it is that life. And once that life is to be the core recognized by the individual, and you respect the life in the other person also, no matter what his body looks like, what his intellectual capacity is, all that is possible only because of the life, which is life in you. The life in you is life there. So you cannot hurt anybody. A previous speaker is saying that killing of people or killing of animals is very hurtful once you realize the essence of the creation is this life principle. Even if you are slightly hurt, it pains you, right? So killing the other creature is definitely not advisable. Here I don't mean that all non-vegetarians should become vegetarians. But here they said killing for a purpose is different. Killing without a purpose is to be avoided. So coming back to this, once we recognize this basic commonality between all the individuals to be this self, which is beyond all description. In our Hindu mythology, there has been a lot of effort put forth to explain this self because it is very subtle. Even to explain mind, it is difficult. You have to experience the mind. And that's what there are processes of meditation, to experience your thoughts, to experience the lack of thoughts. The stillness of the mind brings you happiness. This has been recognized by the sages of the East. I don't only say India, but East in general. They have been focusing on the subconscious, consciousness, the internal organs of action and perception, more than the external world. If you want, 1 second, I need some. Tell me a minute before. I have 30 minutes. I have 13 minutes. 2 minutes more. So my moderator says that I have only 2 minutes. So I would like to use this for the second part of the topic about our relation with the earth. Well, you all appreciate the commonness among all of us to be the consciousness and not to hurt anybody at physical, mental, intellectual, memory levels or the spiritual levels. So we'd all be friends. The aspect of earth, the relationship with the earth, can be best seen, as our previous speakers have also pointed out, that our life depends on this earth. All the crops, all the herbs we need are grown from the earth. We walk on the earth, we sleep on the earth, cultivate, grow, prosper. So there is a responsibility that we feel the belongingness of the earth with us. Now you love your family members. Why? Because you know that they belong to you. Same way, if we can extend that belongingness to the nature, we will not be spoiling the nature as we have been doing it. Now, in the name of industrialization and technological development, we have been doing so many horrible things, and that is coming back to us. The weather patterns have been changing, and people of late have realized the significance of environmental protection by way of reducing the hydrocarbons or reducing the greenhouse gases and generating alternate energy through solar power or wind power. In Hinduism, we worship the earth. It is one of the Panchabhutas, it is called. It is, okay, thank you. It is one of the Panchabhutas. The other are water, fire, air, and space. So Prithvi is earth, and all these four constitute the environment. And it is our duty to protect these five for the continuation of our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much.
I have a combo of two questions for the panelists, and I would request them, they can respond to both of them or any one of them with the maximum time of 5 minutes, because we would like not to delay the lunch a lot. Billy talked about our relationship with the earth. Our friend Shasi talked about majorly on human rights. And Sirinanda talked about the example from the life of the Buddha, how he respected the relationship with earth. I personally think human rights and our relationship to earth, they are two separate accomplished faculties. So in this presentation, still we are missing the connection between the two, the word and. How human rights, where we have right towards each other, and we deserve some rights from our community. That community might be our organized community as a government of any level, right? So we need certain provisions, and we have respect on mutual level. So what is the connection between this aspect of human right and our respect towards the earth? So this is my one question. Let me put both, right? And my second question is, the theme of the conference says, one word, one humanity. Surviving on one planet with a great diverse nature of human rights on this planet. So you would see, if you travel towards east and you go from east to west, you would see a variety of the respect of human rights in the world. Same is true for our relationship with the earth. Some parts of this world, they are more respectful towards the earth as compared to the other parts. If you look at the role of different faith groups or religions, you'd see many religions, they have a limited approach to people of this planet. So when we have diverse nature of human rights, we have diverse respect for the earth, we have limited access of the religion to masses, then how this concept of human rights and our respect towards earth could be put into a conclusive action as one word, one humanity. So two questions. Anyone voluntarily can come up and can respond to any of them or both of them with a maximum time of 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I also, when he handed me the clock there a while ago, I have a visual impairment. I only have a little circle of sight off to that side. So when he came in on my port side and laid the cell phone down, I didn't even see it. But anyway, when it comes to the human rights dealing with individuals and countries and the earth, I just remembered something I completely forgot in the talk, and that is what only 2 countries in the world have put right in their constitution, and that is the rights of Mother Earth itself. There's only 2 countries in the world that have that right in their constitution and act upon it. So that when you think about it that way, it fits in with what I was saying about us coming from the earth. So when we look at the earth itself having rights, how many countries in the world, very few, have the protection of the earth in its constitution and supremacy in its laws? It doesn't exist. And that's what the Blue Dot campaign was trying to do. But again, it related it to us having the right to fresh air, clean water, and all of that, but not the earth itself having rights. The right not to be polluted, the right not to be destroyed. So that's where the connection between human rights and the earth comes in. It's whatever your starting point is. And it's like that saying that if you change the way you look at something, what you're looking at changes. And that I think that's very important that we make that connection.
This is a very pertinent question asked. The relation between the human rights and about the earth, how we protect the earth. As I explained, if we can really experience the commonness, the commonality, the self in everybody, you cannot hurt anybody. And also realize that every human right comes with a responsibility, equal responsibility. You don't have rights all alone. The rights go with the responsibilities. And here we see our entire civilization, our entire prosperity is based on the well-being of the earth. As I said, we produce crops, herbs from the earth. So if the earth is not having enough capacity to do that, then we'll all be starving. And we have to realize the connection between earth and the continuation of the human species. And we extract minerals from the earth and bowels of the earth, and you have oil, hydrocarbons, metals. Everything is earth-based only. You don't produce anything in the air. So once that responsibility is recognized and the sense of belongingness, that the earth belongs to us, then only we have a thought of even protecting the environment. And one more aspect of this is equal responsibility. Everybody has got the responsibility to protect the earth, not only one or two or three, a few countries. As you have seen all these international conferences on environment, they always speak about carbon levels of 2050. By 2030, we should reach 2005 levels of, hydrocarbons and all that. But who has to implement it? Unfortunately, there is no one country which can impose on other country these restrictions. These are self-modulated, self-regulated, and everybody has to behave and realize the responsibility to protect the earth in order for the race to continue. Otherwise, the way the sea levels are rising, the ice caps are melting. If people have seen, there has been a drastic decrease in the coverage of ice at the poles. So if the water starts flooding, all these cities which have been built on the seashore, very close to the seashore, they will all be underwater. And with all that, there is a huge calamity that is going to be predicted by these environmentalists. And people have to be educated. And I insist on this aspect of education, a proper education. Not only the university education, but the education about the heart, about the self, about the relationship between the individual and the environment. This connection, when it is recognized, then only it is possible to meet and reach any of the goals set forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So because we are a little bit late, so I'm sorry I'm not opening up question for the audience, but you have one? Okay, so we can take one. Okay.
It's quite practical, and I just want to bring to the awareness of everyone here. Some of you may or may not know about Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lookout, but it's a local issue, and it's one that is kind of valuable for us to all understand, that Blue Mountain Birch Cove can become the largest wilderness park, I know for sure, in Canada. And it is something that now we have a new council in HRM. I encourage all of you to participate in that conversation. I'll leave my opinions beyond that. Thank you.
You have seen when the three speakers, they were presenting, you would see, I'm not saying each faith is limited, but the emphasis of each presentation was emphasizing on a certain aspect. So that supports that different religions or people who follow different faiths, so they have impression sometimes towards one aspect of an issue. For example, we saw this issue, this topic. So such conferences like this that provides us a chance to look out of our boxes, look into the other boxes as well, and see what the other boxes tell us on different topics, right? So I conclude by opening up the box of Islam for you by telling you that 1400 years before, approximately, when Islam was introduced, you would find a detailed description of human rights with respect to every relation possible. You would see detailed description of rights of animals, detailed description of the rights of earth, rights of trees. You can think of in all the details. So I'm offering you a box, look at it, and you would see different religions, some more comprehensive, some having one emphasis, the other having other emphasis. They offer you a lot to look into. So I conclude with this note: we should look out of our boxes so that we can get the other perspective on that issue. With this, I thank you all, the panelists, and I would request you a loud round of applause for them to conclude the session.